Hello, and we are live. Good evening, everybody. It is 8:47 p.m., or rather 8:43 p.m. on January 29th. Today is podcast number 12, and we are about to go live on Instagram as well. We are live on the majority of the platforms. Today, the topic is uh, today the topic is 5 lessons from my father. Now, I was going to talk about something else related to business and dentistry, but I decided to leave that for tomorrow. But today, I'm going to talk about the 5 lessons that I learned, and I learned many lessons from my dad, but I learned 5 very golden lessons. I want to share them with you, and hopefully, you will glean one or two of them, and they'll benefit you somehow in your life. They've allowed me to pass through a lot of hard times, and if you're going through hard times, then maybe one or two of those will be a key to your escape from those hard times. Without Before we continue, this podcast is sponsored by Spinati Dentistry. Spinati Dentistry is located in London, Ontario. They are located in Hyde Park and Sarnia. They focus on cosmetic dentistry and family dentistry. They have won many accolades, one of which is the 2024 Consumer Choice Awards. They have also won the number one dentist on Rate MDs and many others as well. I suggest you check them out. If you're looking for a new dentist, you will absolutely love them and be very delighted for that choice. Continuing on with the podcast, these 5 lessons are very, very cool because they've allowed me to pass through very tough times, like I said, and hopefully they'll help you as well. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with those 5 lessons. So, this podcast is meant to be very short, but it's meant to be impactful in the way that, hopefully you'll learn something from it. The first lesson is that of never complaining. Now, my parents immigrated from Kuwait, and in Kuwait, they had their full time jobs, very prosperous, very successful. And then they immigrated from Kuwait to Canada because of certain conditions, and their banks and their jobs and everything was completely lost. So, and they couldn't start where they stopped from in Kuwait because they didn't have a equivalency kind of recognition of their skills and their degrees from from back home. And so they had to start from absolutely scratch, had no access to money whatsoever. So it was a very tough time. Imagine if you had to start from scratch. You are a professional, you've been working for a while, you're an executive or whatever, and you are forced to immigrate to another country, and then all of a sudden now you have to start from scratch. You have no access to any money whatsoever, and you have to start from the beginning. What would you do? How would you think? Now, what the thing that I learned from them, and this is both from my parents, from both my father and my mother, is that they worked through a lot of jobs, and I've seen them go through from job to job, from career to career, business to business. And despite all the difficulties and all the hardships and all the long hours, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, they never ever, not once did they ever complain about work. Not once did they ever complain about work. And this is something that I found absolutely magnificent. It wasn't something that they told me directly, where they said, or they told me and my siblings, where they said, "Do not complain about work because work is work." No, that was just one of my observations that I saw in them. And so I asked them later on, much later on. I said, "Why is it that you don't complain about work?" And my mom told me, she said, "Because I love work." And my dad said, "Because work is part of life. So why would you complain about a part of life that is a fact, that is a de facto?" So that is one thing that I learned in that, and I'm guilty that I have complained about work, and I'm sure a lot of you have complained about work. But the one thing that I've learned, or the top thing that I've learned, is never complain about work, because work is just, it's that, and you have to do it. And it's one of those things that you just can't escape it. You live, you work. It's just one of those things. And so that's one of the biggest lessons that I learned, which is never to complain about work. It's something magnificent because I haven't seen it repeated anywhere else, to be quite honest with you, because it seems like everyone else complains about work. And so that's one of the golden principles that I got from my dad and also from my mom. The number two is my dad. I was complaining to my dad about a tough time that I was having. And he told me, he said, "Son," he said, "Spinatis survive anywhere." He said, "Put a Spinati anywhere, put him in a rough desert, put him in the middle of the ocean, he will survive. Because a Spinati doesn't quit. A Spinati does not give up." And that is so true to my life. I have never, ever thought that it is possible for me to quit. I've complained a lot, for sure, but I've never, ever thrown in the towel. No matter how tough it's gotten in my life, throughout my life so far, it's never been in me for me to seek any kind of end to any tough times. And so he was absolutely correct in that Spinatis always survive. And that's a huge lesson for me because no matter what tough time I pass through, I always go back and I reflect on that thing. Now, he tied it to lineage, okay, which is a huge thing to tie it to because obviously now you're thinking about all your ancestors. You're like, well, if I fail, what are they going to think? Now, it's really cool because you can do the same thing too, right? With regards to your lineage, and anyone can put their family, in that sentence and put, whatever your family is always survives. So this is a really cool thing because once you have that belief that there's nothing that you can do that will make you lose, sure, it'll take you a long time to win, sometimes longer than usual, but you'll never quit. And because you'll never quit, you will win. The third lesson that I got from my dad was when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, my dad owned a gas station. And so I used to go with him. In reality, he actually used to drag me, but I used to go with him to the gas station very early in the morning, like we're talking 4 a.m. Thanks, Dad. So, and that's why I love the mornings. See that? That's a lesson. That's like a indirect lesson. And so he would take me to the gas station, and I would see him position in the gas station. He had a convenience store, and he would sell juice in there. And there was a big fridge, and in that fridge, he would position all the juice and all the bottles. He would position the branding facing the outside so that customers, when they walk in, they would see all the branding. And me being a very curious child, I asked him, I said, why are you doing that? What's the point? Why can't you just put them and just leave them like that? He said, people do not buy what they cannot see. And that's a huge lesson for me in sales, in that I learned that sales is a matter of clarity, in that if you can speak clearly, if you can articulate yourself clearly so that the other person can see your point of view, then you will be able to sell them. Now, many of you may not like the term sales because it's associated with something very icky and very evil. But whether you like it or not, everyone is a salesperson. Children are salespeople. They're the best salespeople, actually, because they'll make you buy them anything. If you've ever arguing is a form of sales. You're selling your idea. And so if you cannot be clear in the way that you are communicating your idea, and you cannot be convincing, then you can never sell anything. And that is one of the lessons that I learned simply from him turning the branding to the face of the customers. The fourth is what I learned growing up. And what we learned growing up, me and my siblings, is that lying is absolutely forbidden. So we learned that honesty is primo supremo and that you cannot lie no matter what it is, even if it's against you, you just cannot lie. And so that's one of the lessons that I learned. I found it really, really strange that, whenever I went and when I started high school, specifically when I started high school, I don't know why I didn't pay attention to that during, elementary and middle school, but I paid attention to it specifically in high school. And I saw that a lot of people started backbiting. There's a lot of drama with regards to, different kinds of people. And I found a lot of people not telling the truth. And I found it really strange. Now, obviously, the more that I interacted with people, I found out that this is actually a norm. But because we grew up in an environment where lying was absolutely not okay, it just became something that was ingrained in me. And now growing older, all these lessons that I learned in my childhood are coming and resurfacing and saying, hey, get back to your roots. The fifth lesson that I learned, and I'm about to share with you also a bonus lesson, and this is from my mom. Okay, this is a huge lesson that I learned from my mom, but this is after the lesson number 5 from my dad. So stay tuned. And this is it is a really big bonus that I learned from my mom. The fifth, and I know this statement is incredibly trite. Okay, I know, and I know you see it everywhere. It's everywhere on every single meme, TikToks, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you've seen it tons of time, you've heard it tons of time. But my dad told me this before Facebook or Instagram even existed. He said to me, he said, son, and this was completely random, by the way. He just grabbed me. He was working in the garage and he grabbed me and he said, son, I want to tell you something. Impossible is nothing. If you see someone else doing something, you have to understand that you have the ability to do the exact same thing and even better. Never believe that there's anything that you cannot do. That was a direct lesson. One of the few, actually, that he's taught me. He's a man of few words, but that's like something that was very direct towards me, and I've never forgotten it. And it falls very, very close to the second lesson, which I shared with you, which is a Spinati always survives, in that impossible is nothing. There's no such thing as impossible. If someone else has done it, you can do it, and you can do it even better. Now, the bonus. I experienced a heartbreak back some time ago, and so I went to my mom and I explained to her this heartbreak, and she said to me something so powerful that I carry it to this day, and it really opened my eyes to a different perspective on life. When I shared with her the heartbreak, she said to me, she said, "Al hayat tajrubah." She said, "Life is a series of experiments." I said it in Arabic. She said, "A life is a series of experiments," which means that there is no one direct way to achieve your goal. You can achieve your goal through many different ways, but there is a way for you to achieve it, and it's not a cookie cutter way. And never be afraid to make any mistakes. I learned that simply by her telling me, Al Hayat Tajrubi, which means life is a series of experiments. I hope these 5 lessons and the bonus lesson were something that maybe you heard and has reminded you of something, and now all of a sudden you feel empowered. Whatever it is, I hope the tough times that you're going through are only minor and they are transient and they will soon perish, and you will prosper in success and happiness. And as always, stay safe and keep smiling. Good night.